If Roe hadn't fallen, today would be the 51st anniversary. So the anti-abortion people are out in full effect, and they are saying they hate God. Let's talk about this article from The Guardian. Within the subterranean levels of a fancy hotel in downtown Washington, just a few days before the 51st anniversary of Roe, the anti-abortion movement was trying to mount a comeback. Kevin Roberts stood on a stage in the cavernous ballroom aglow with neon shades of blue, purple, and pink. As the president of the Heritage Foundation, Roberts leads one of the main think tanks behind the recent conservative attacks on abortion, and he is not happy with how things are going. We meet today amid a pro-abortion media narrative of smug triumphalism. Robert told hundreds of young abortion foes who had gathered in the ballroom from across the country to hear him and other anti-abortion leaders speak. You've heard the story. Less than 2 years after the Supreme Court overturned Roe, the abortion industrial complex is celebrating an unprecedented political winning streak. Across the country, pro-life bills have failed. They have failed miserably. Y'all keep failing. Abortion referenda have passed. Democrat leaders are crowing while too many Republican leaders are cowering from the fight. Roberts was speaking at the annual National Pro-Life Summit, a one-day organizing camp for high school and college-age anti-abortion activists. This year, the summit faced a monumental task. Organizers and attendees alike hope to reinvigorate the movement that at 18 months ago soared to the height of its power with overturning of Roe, and then, in the months that followed, has repeatedly crash-landed back on Earth. Since Roe's demise, 7 states have voted on some abortion-related ballot referendums. In each case, voters have decisively moved to protect abortion rights, even in ruby red states like Kentucky, Kansas, and Montana. The stakes are even higher in 2024. Not only are roughly a dozen more states gearing up to potentially vote on some abortion-related referendums, but the future of the White House is on the line. If abortion hurts Republicans, the elections, as is widely thought to have done in the 2022 midterms, anti-abortion activists may see the GOP brand their movement as ballot box poison. The National Pro-Life Summit is generally a peek into what the anti-abortion movement is telling itself about itself. And at the present, it is not happy with Republicans. For years, the anti-abortion movement has corralled voters for Republicans. On Saturday, they repeatedly condemned the GOP for failing to adequately support their cause. The last Republican president appointed the justices who overturned Roe, while red states have enacted more than a dozen near total bans since the ruling fell. But many Republicans have begun to back away from the issue. Before the 2022 elections, several quietly downplayed their stances, while dozens of House Republicans have delayed signing onto a bill to nationally ban abortions. Our friends in the Republican Party need to touch some grass, said Kristen Hawkins, the president of Students for Life of America, the organization behind the summit. Those who say now that we shouldn't be talking, that Republican candidates, those seeking for office, should hide from this abortion issue, they continue to be wrong. We won't win if we put our heads in the sand. Democrats are already attempting to use Roe's impact on doctors to win votes, as Joe Biden's re-election campaign has launched a blitz of events and ads timed to the Roe anniversary on Monday. Vice President Kamala Harris will kick off a tour devoting to spotlighting abortion access, while Biden will assemble a meeting of his reproductive health task force. His administration has also announced plans to expand access to contraception under the ACA, as well as an initiative to spread information about a law that the administration says guarantees Americans legal rights to emergency abortions, even in states that ban the procedure. A thin line. The mood on Saturday wasn't totally dour. Attendees could buy baseball caps that read, "I'm just over here saving babies," sweatshirts that bore an image of a newspaper front page that proclaimed Roe reversed, as well as red hats adorned with the words, "Make America pro-life again," in the unmistakable style of Trump's MAGA hats. Young people excitedly posed for group photos in front of a backdrop that read "Equal Rights for the Preborn" and illustrated fetus that was curled up in one corner. Yet, in speech after speech, activists told young people that they were the victims of vast forces arrayed against them. They accused the abortion rights supporters of spreading misinformation about ballot referendums and said they were simply outspent by the opposition. In Ohio, some abortion rights supporters reported receiving about 3 times as much money as a coalition that opposed abortion rights. These people love chaos. That is the left. The left is inherently chaotic at its core, said Will Witt, a conservative influencer who, like Roberts, spoke at the morning address to all attendees. After quoting from the Bible in an effort to demonstrate that God originated order, Witt continued, "This is why the left, this is why these pro-choicers, this is why they hate God, because God represents order in the world, whereas they love chaos." The summit speakers were attempting to walk a fine line. At the same time, they were attempting to convince attendees that they were the victims of a world turned against them. They also had to make the case that opposition to abortion is a majority view and one issue that can get Republicans elected. Our opinion on this issue, the issue, is not outside of the mainstream, no matter how many times ABC wants to try to tell me it is, Hawkins told attendees at a workshop dedicated to understanding what went wrong with the abortion referendums. Most millennials and members of Gen Z, she added, want some sort of limits on abortion. Polling on abortion is complex since respondents' answers can vary widely depending on how a question is asked or how much context is provided. Most Americans believe that abortion should be restricted after the first trimester of pregnancy, according to polling from Gallup. However, over the last 2 decades, more and more people have become open to keeping abortion legal later into pregnancy. Republicans in Virginia failed to take control of the state legislature last year after they ran on a promise of banning abortion past 15 weeks of pregnancy. Gallup also found that since 2020, more Americans identify as pro-choice than pro-life. More people have started to call themselves pro-choice since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe in 2022. Hawkins is not in favor of only some sorts of limits on abortion. "I want to see no abortion be legal ever," she said in an interview. She rejected the notion that abortions performed to save women's lives qualify as abortions. When you're looking at a case where a woman's life is at risk, where the physician believes she can no longer safely carry her child in her womb, or she may lose her life, we wouldn't consider that as abortion unless the abortionist goes in with the intention on unaliving the child. Instead, she called it maternal fetal separation. So they just out here making up terms. Maternal fetal separation. Oh, okay. Hawkins' point was an effort to contend with the phenomenon that has been particularly damaging for the movement, stories from women who have sued after they said they were denied medically necessary abortions. Every state with a ban has some kind of exception for cases of medical emergencies, but doctors in those states have widely said that the exceptions are so vague as to be unworkable. In a recent study of 54 OBGYNs in states with post-Roe abortion restrictions, more than 90% said the law prevented them from adhering to best clinical standards of care. You vote pro-life. Last year, when the National Pro-Life Summit held a straw poll asking attendees about their preferred 2024 presidential candidate, Ron DeSantis won. This year, with DeSantis a day away from dropping out the primary, Hawkins cheerfully proclaimed the latest straw poll victor, Donald Trump. As much as their leaders may lock heads with Republicans or Trump, who has suggested that hardline stances hurt Republicans, they are ultimately unlikely to withhold votes from the GOP. Even Trump's former VP, Mike Pence, who was the target of the January 6th riot and who spoke at the summit, indicated that people need to simply get on with it. That's why we have primaries. We sort them out at every level, but after the primary is over, you vote pro-life, Pence said. You get behind the men and women who are going to stand for the right of life. So that is where these people are. They forget the polling, forget what's popular. They are just going straight for it, and I am with it. I am with it. Just let them keep on talking so people can keep voting against them.
Right now, there is a quiet but well-funded campaign led by the most powerful anti-abortion groups in the country that is focused entirely on pressuring and forcing women to carry doomed pregnancies to term. They're not only trying to do away with exceptions for non-viable pregnancies, they're trying to eradicate prenatal testing altogether. It's a lot easier to force women to carry a dying fetus to term if they never get diagnosed to begin with. When I tell people about this, the question I get asked most often is why? Why would anyone want to deliberately create a world where women are forced to be walking coffins? It is inexplicable until you understand that this has nothing to do with families or babies, but enforcing a worldview that says it's women's job to be pregnant and to stay pregnant, no matter what the cost or consequence. But because Republicans don't have the bravery to admit that truth, and because they're afraid of voters who are more pro-choice than ever, they lie. They talk about compassion because they know that their laws are cruel. They use the word consensus while passing bans that voters don't want. And they call Democrats extremists while fighting for the right to deny women life-saving abortions in emergency rooms.
It's very, very interesting watching how the different states are handling the choice or anti-choice referendums or policies or whatever. So this is from Politico. New York GOP challenged on some abortion rights on Roe anniversary. We're just going to keep on talking about this. Democrats are seizing every opportunity to remind voters which party seeks to keep curtailing abortion access. The 51st anniversary Monday of Roe v. Wade, now overturned, is their latest chance. It's crystal clear to me that the GOP is fully committed to a nationwide ban, Representative Pat Ryan said in an interview. They're continuing to even more aggressively pursue that, literally choosing a Speaker of the House that authored a bill for a nationwide ban, and that would certainly affect New York. Some abortion rights are more literally on the ballot here this November with a state level equal rights amendment, the New York Equal Protection of Law Amendment, being put to a vote. Democrats hope the measure will boost turnout against vulnerable House Republicans, all of whom voted last Thursday for two bills seeking to steer pregnant women away from abortion. And House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and party leaders repeatedly tie Republicans, moderate, far right, and in between, to House Speaker Mike Johnson, who is unabashedly opposed and spoke Friday at the March of Life in Washington. But whether reproductive rights will be a winning issue in a blue state where the majority supports them remains to be seen. Immigration, crime, and inflation are immediate voter concerns for New Yorkers ahead of an issue already enshrined in state law because they are living the hellish nightmare inflicted on them by Joe Biden and Kathy Hochul every day, National Republican Campaign Committee spokesperson Jack Pandal said in a statement. Backing up that case is an Emerson College polling ahead of the special election in Nassau County in Queens finds that just 4% of voters in district view abortion access as the most important issue. Immigration and the economy top the list at 26% and 22% respectively. Ryan's Republican opponent in the Hudson Valley, Allison Esposito, in a statement cited the same issues as the NRCC as priorities, calling the focus on abortion political pandering. Access could be more of a flashpoint in the Ryan Esposito race than others in the state, especially because Ryan won his 2022 special election by leaning into the right to choose as freedom that should be protected. Esposito has said that she believes that abortion should be very rare and legislation should expand options to choose life. Ryan predicted there will certainly be a political price to pay for swing districts Republicans who last week backed the bills impacting information for pregnant students and funding for pregnancy centers. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee accused lawmakers they're targeting of marching towards a nationwide ban days ahead of Roe turning 51. Representatives Anthony D'Esposito and Nick LaLota of Long Island and Representative Mark Molinaro of upstate New York stressed in statements to Politico that they opposed a federal abortion ban. A spokesperson for Representative Mike Lawler of the Hudson Valley said of the bill pertaining to students, the deeply personal choice these young women are confronted with should be respected, regardless of what that choice is. Neither bill has a chance in the Democratic-led Senate, but both give the DCCC and its candidates another foothold in the fight to protect rights. Long Island Democrat Laura Gillen, who is challenging D'Esposito, labeled him an extremist for voting to use taxpayer dollars to fund anti-abortion canceling services that do not provide adequate healthcare information. D'Esposito's campaign spokesperson said that the lawmaker will always support giving women information on available pregnancy assistance resources so they can make the best decision for their personal circumstances. Did y'all hear that? Information available on pregnancy assistance. So not the totality of their reproductive rights. The spokesperson said D'Esposito rejects the extremes, not just a nationwide ban, but late-term abortions as well. So that is where New York is landing, and I am sure that we're going to see more and more states try to grapple with the impact and the fallout of Roe. So we're going to keep pushing and watching and seeing what is going on in the political climate.
We've got to stop electing predatory fucking dinosaurs into office. This is Scott Airden. Yes, they always look like that. Scotty here wants to remove all exceptions from the already extraordinarily restrictive Idaho abortion ban. When asked if he meant that he literally didn't want there to be an exception for a 13-year-old child who is the victim of rape or incest, here's what he had to say.
Right now, we do not have equal protection in the law based on the alleged circumstances of conception.
Let me be clear. What you're saying then is there are no exceptions. Let's say a 13-year-old girl was raped by an uncle, a father, a brother, and that we would force that 13-year-old to carry a pregnancy and have a child and not get an abortion. Is that what I'm hearing?
So presently, all we're doing with the legislation is that we are banning abortions in the case where a person alleges that the child was conceived in rape or incest. The state of Idaho has nothing to do with forcing pregnancy, forcing crimes, forcing alleged crimes, or forcing anybody to carry a child at all. These are merely natural circumstances. The state of Idaho does not control that. Some people could describe the situation that you're talking about as the opportunity to have a child in those terrible circumstances if the rape actually occurred.
So yet again, another legislator suggesting that forcing a child to have a baby is a good thing. Also, stop talking about alleged means of conception. The only thing alleged is who the criminal was, who the perpetrator was. A child who becomes pregnant was raped because children can't consent. It is that fucking simple.